This is not a do-it-yourselfer project. Sure, you could go out and bring an internet, put up 2, 3, 4, 5, Wi-Fi routers around your RV park in a mesh type format. Put it on your website that you offer Wi-Fi, but it's probably going to suck. Just like all the other RV parks out there that I've been to with sucky Wi-Fi. Hi, this is Comet Troy, the RV park builder. I'm on site here at Harmony Ridge RV Park near Linden, Tennessee in Perry County. And we're going to continue our series, our 3-part series on the internet. We already had part 1 talking about how to get internet here at the road. Now part 2, we're actually going to have a sit down with Hef, the IT guy, and talk about some of the strategies for providing internet to your guests and how to do that in the best way. We're going to talk about some challenges, some things to look at, some design things. So let's get right to it. We got Hef here with us. So Hef, what are the things that you look for in an internet provider? That's kind of where you start, right? When you're bringing in internet to the park, into the park. So what do you look for specifically? So there are several items to consider when getting internet for your RV park. Availability, what's the download bandwidth, what's the upload bandwidth, latency, data caps, throttling, deprioritization, price, support, reliability, and of course it's got to be available in your area. So when selecting an RV park, it's important to consider what you're getting from your vendor. Now, originally I was going to go through all these things, with technical detail and explain each one, but I think I'd probably bore you all to death. So I think what I'm going to do instead is just bring up some websites of the vendors that we have, available here in Linden. We have fiber internet at the road. We have Starlink, of course, so it's available. And, we have the cell providers. We have T-Mobile at home, and, Verizon's got a home offer right now. And all those are available options. I'm not really going to go over the cellular options too much because, they're more geared towards home internet, and they just wouldn't be, acceptable for an RV park. And I'll go into that a little bit, but I will touch on a little bit of what each of those topics were. Bandwidth, download and upload bandwidth. Think of that as like a fire hose versus a garden hose versus a straw. You can fill up a 5-gallon bucket with a fire hose a lot quicker than you can fill it up with a garden hose, and if you were to just use a straw, it would take forever. So that's how bandwidth works. Latency is how long the data gets from point A to point B. So if you're a big distance from the website you're pulling data from, then you're going to have a higher latency, a delay. You can think of it as a delay. This mainly comes into play when you're talking about satellite services. I used to have a Hughes satellite, which was 33,000 miles up in the sky. I'm not sure if that's quite right or not. Let me see here. 22,000 miles above the Earth is where the Hughes satellites were, and the latency was just terrible. It averages around 650 milliseconds. Again, I'm probably getting a little too technical, but basically I would type a key on my keyboard when I was remote working, and I would see it show up on my screen, maybe a second or two later, and it was just painfully slow, unusable. Starlink has fixed some of that latency by having satellites much lower to the Earth. They're only 342 miles above the Earth as opposed to 22,000 miles, but it makes a huge difference. So latency, we typically only, are concerned about it with the satellite services. Now, data caps, throttling, and deprioritization. The internet providers, when you're talking about internet bandwidth and what they can provide, there's a technical limitation there. I mean, they can only provide so much bandwidth, and they have to share it amongst all the people, all their subscribers. So they use what's called a fair use policy to determine how to balance that. Now, when loads are light and everyone's sleeping, then everyone gets nice fast internet. But after everyone gets home from work, maybe at 6 o'clock after dinner, at 7 o'clock, everyone is streaming Netflix or, Amazon Prime or whatever. There can be quite a bit of contention in, the internet space out there. And that's where data caps, throttling, and deprioritization comes into play. And, that basically allows internet providers to, give everybody a little bit rather than the maximum. So if you're used to 50, megabits of download speed, you might only get 10 or 20 megabits of download speed, across, those early evening hours when everyone is streaming. So that's a little bit about what you can expect from vendors. So let's go ahead and look at some actual data. So here I have on my screen MLConnect, and I have a side-by-side comparison. MLConnect, so let me just back up. We have Meriwether Lewis Electric Company here, electric co-op, I guess it is officially, that provides our electrical service. Now they have gotten into the internet service, the fiber internet service out here in Perry County, Tennessee, and other counties within the same area. They call it MLConnect, Meriwether Lewis Connect, and they offer fiber internet. It runs down their utility poles, and they can, run it into your property. So they have two different types of offerings. They have a home offering, which you see here on the left, and then they have a business offering, which is on the right. Now, most people would just shop, the internet speed, and that's what a lot of the vendors provide on their website is speed. So if I look at the private offering here, I have 300 megabits of speed, and then their home deluxe package is 1 gigabit. If I look at the business side, for $10 more, $59.95, you actually go from 300 megabits down to 200 megabits. And then the Business Pro, goes up to 500 megabits. So that's 159, quite a bit of jump there. And then to get the 1 gigabit speed on the business side, which is equivalent to the the home deluxe side, it's going to cost you $249.95 to get 1 gigabit. Now on the surface, if you're only looking at bandwidth, you'd say, well, geez, I'm just gonna order the home internet, and I'm gonna order the home deluxe for $79.95, and then I'm gonna save myself, let's see, 200 and whatever, $180, I guess it would be, or $170, whatever the math is, it doesn't matter. But you really have to pay attention to the fine print. So we talked about caps before. The residential has no data caps. The business has no data caps. The business is slower. The home is faster. So why would I want to order the business internet? Well, there's a couple things here that you can gather. So I talked about data prioritization, throttling, and data caps. So when you order a business package, you get prioritization. So you get guaranteed prioritized throughput over on the business side. What that means is that if there's contention, so we'll go back to the example of, after dinner, 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock, all the users out there, all the residential people are streaming Netflix. They'll start getting deprioritized amongst themselves. But if you have a business package, if you're a business, then you're going to be prioritized on top of those home users. So, if I have a 500 megabit, guaranteed, well, they don't really guarantee it because, the bandwidth is limited. There is a technical limitation here. But I could potentially on the Business Pro or even on the Business Essential with 200 megabits get faster download speeds and upload speeds than a home user that has 1 gigabit of bandwidth because of prioritization, data prioritization, where the business users are prioritized ahead of the home users. So if you're going to open an RV park and you're going to, provide internet to your customers, you're probably going to want to, order a business type package. The worst, well, I shouldn't say the worst thing that can happen in an RV park, but, you really don't want to get in a situation where you have your guests calling and saying that your internet sucks. They can't, they're getting constant spinning in hourglasses. They're trying to watch a movie. And, that would be more likely to happen on the home internet side. The other thing that business internet provides you is better upload speeds. You could, from the business side, you could host your own website. You could have your own media server. You could, have, a various different things where you're providing internet out or providing internet services out to the internet. So typically when, vendors advertise their download, they advertise, 300 megabits or 1 gigabit or, whatever. But they very rarely, talk about the upload speeds. The upload speeds are typically a lot slower. Now here, which is kind of interesting, is they actually have a slash here, 300/300. When you see a slash between the numbers, the first number is the upload or the download speed, and the second number is the upload speed typically. So here what they're advertising is Home Essential, 300 megabits download, 300 megabits upload. The gigabit, they don't have similar nomenclature like that. So, this tells me that they're just advertising, 1 gigabit of download and upload, could be 20 megabits or 30 or 40 megabits, which is pretty common. Most people, when they're streaming movies and that, they're downloading data from the internet. Data's coming from the internet to them. So most residential users care about the upload speeds. I got that backwards. Most residential users care about the download speeds. Business users, upload becomes more important. So if I'm a remote worker, for example, and, I am participating in a video call, I'm actually sending my video images, to my work. So the upload speeds, are going to be more important in that type of setting. Or if you're a content creator, like we are here at the RV Park Builder channel, we, would upload content to YouTube. And sometimes, those files can get pretty big. So that's why you'd want to, order a business service, I guess. You get, and here, they specifically call it out as symmetrical. Symmetrical internet access means that you get 1 gigabit download and you get 1 gigabit upload. Same thing here for the 500 megabit. They also specifically call out, the symmetrical internet access. And, down here with the 200 megabits, they don't specifically call it out as far as symmetrical. So, but I know from experience, because this is what we have at Harmony Ridge RV Park right now, is this package here. And, we have some room to grow. So if we want to if we start running out of that, we can increase to 500 or even a gigabit and ramp that up, as needed, and ramp it down as well with just a phone call. The other thing that you will get with sometimes with a business package is static IP, which think of this like the post office. So if you were to put a mailbox in front of your house, that'd be similar to a static IP address. So people can send mail to you and, know where you're at, know where the residence is, where, a post office box is more temporary, where that's kind of like on the home side. You get to use an address for, while you continue to pay for it. So same thing with the residential, you get more of a dynamic IP address. It gets assigned to you when you dial up. Now, why is this important? The static IP address allows you to host like a website, for example, or host a media server. So that's where a static IP address comes into play. We don't intend on probably hosting our own website, but, we would have that fixed IP address if we wanted to have some cameras, for example, some security cameras. We can maybe connect into those remotely without having to go through a server in China. So that is, what we have here. Now, if we go on over and look at Starlink, then we'll move on. So let me switch on over. I just starting to think that, we're just getting maybe a little too technical off into the weeds here, but I'm just going to show you real quick, and, maybe this can help you do some of your own research. But let's say that you were considering getting Starlink at your RV park. You can go into Starlink, and I already kind of looked to where this information was to find it, so you won't have to bear with me, but you'll never find it in, they have a residential, they have a business package, they have a mobile package, roaming package, so that, they have different types of packets, and it's all marketing fluff, high speed, low latency, blah, 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 whatever. So where you really find the critical information is under, if you scroll into the bottom, you can click on privacy and legal. This is where you find the good stuff. So they're going to want you to make you pick a region, because the legalese will, depend upon what area you're in. So the U.S. is at the bottom. So there it is. So once I pick the U.S., then I get all the documents that Starlink has. And the two that are interesting here is what's called a fair use policy. So this is how Starlink, if you were to get Starlink for your business, this is how Starlink deals with congestion. If they've exceeded the amount of data that the satellites can handle, this is the policy that comes into play. And I'm not going to read through this in great detail. You can do that at your own time. But basically, they've divided their fair use policies. So here's kind of the gist too. I'm not going to read this again, but this talks about how they're going to, allocate, or how they're going to manage their network when it becomes congested. So Starlink has two different classes of service. They have a fixed service. So this is, putting a dish out in your front yard or on top of your business or whatever. It's not meant to be moved. And then they have mobility services. The mobility services are meant to go on a boat, an RV, an airplane, and that's kind of the difference there. So let's just focus on the fixed services. So, and mobile services is the same way. Okay, so the fixed versus mobile is just, the physical placement of your dish, and they charge you more for mobile services. So if you were looking at getting Starlink services for your RV park to serve to guests, you can do it. And that would fall underneath the fixed services plan. Now, within both fixed and mobile services, they have what's called a standard service and priority service plan. So this is very similar to what MLConnect has with the residential plan and the priority plan. All this means is that, the standard Starlink users are all going to be put into a pool, and all their data is going to be, throttled and balanced amongst all of those users. And then if you pay extra for the priority service plan, then you'll get priority over the standard users. So it's all spelled out here in the fine print. The priority service plans that Starlink offers is they actually have 4 different plans here that you can buy. They have a 40 gigabit plan, a 1 terabyte plan, and a terabyte, if you don't know, is 1,000 gigabytes. So they have a 2 terabyte plan here, or 2,000 gigabytes, and then a 6 terabyte plan. And, that costs you extra. So if you wanted to use Starlink in your RV park and you wanted to have, good throughput, you would probably want to buy a priority service plan. And then, the difference between the fiber and the satellite is the fiber is, if you buy the commercial plan, you get prioritized. Now, granted, I didn't actually find, the nitty gritty small fine print details in MLConnect, but I'm assuming that, if you buy the commercial plan, that there's not these, caps of data blocks. Once you run out, then, once you run out of your priority service that you bought, then you drop down to the standard plan and you're prioritized with everyone else. So how much does it cost to get priority data from Starlink? Well, you can, it's going to vary by county or country. So I'm just going to click on this. I'm going to open it in a new tab here. So here is the fair use policy, and the columns are, the 400 gig, the 1 terabyte, 2 terabyte, and 6 terabyte. And U.S. again is going to be towards the bottom. So if you're looking at, the United States, you're looking at, for the, I got to make that a little bit bigger. I can't really see that. There we go. So the United States for the 400 gigabit plan is $130 for priority data. Now this is on top of, I believe this is on top of your, your base Starlink fee. So I think Starlink's, right around the $100 mark, maybe $120. So then this would be, if you want to buy 40 gigabytes of priority data, that's an extra $130. If you want to buy a terabyte of data, it's $250 a month. Is it 2 terabytes and then 6. So 2 terabytes would be $500, and 6 terabytes will cost you a whopping $1,500 extra per month. So I would probably avoid Starlink, even the prioritized data, for your RV park unless you have no other choice. And then I would probably, seriously consider getting priority, buying some priority data, and, or not, you just, if you don't buy it, then you're just in the standard tier with everyone else, and your data gets balanced and prioritized and with everyone else's, So that's what you're looking at with Starlink. I did look up some T-Mobile stuff, and anything that goes over the air is going to be problematic for an RV park. There's only so much capacity that can be transmitted over the airwaves. So you're going to find with the T-Mobile at home and the Verizon, you're going to find some, data throttling. Yeah, they all have unlimited data. They all claim that. But what they don't tell you is, if everyone is using unlimited data and they're using it to the max, and you have all these people in your area all using it, then, your speeds are going to slow down. I mean, that's just the fact of the matter. And you know what? Honestly, they'll slow down too, even if you have priority data and even if you have fiber. I mean, you could be subject to throttling as well, but you are buying priority, so you don't. You're not as You're probably not subjected as much to those data throttling and caps and that. The other thing we didn't talk about is reliability. That's kind of important as well. Here in Middle Tennessee, we're in a heavily wooded area. Our fiber internet goes down the utility poles. So, if we get a bad storm here and trees fall and knock out the power lines, they're probably also going to knock out our fiber internet. So maybe not quite as reliable as satellite. If I had satellite or Starlink here and a storm did come through and knock out the power lines and the internet, I'd still be able to get service, from my dish, assuming I had another power source to, power the equipment. I mean, if I don't have power and I can't, run my satellite receiver or my stuff, then, it doesn't really matter whether I have satellite or not. And in an RV park, you're probably not going to have a backup generator and have another form of power to power all the equipment. So it's probably, not a big deal to have fiber internet from a reliability standpoint, because if you lose power, you're probably not going to be able to run satellite either, unless you plan for that. So in summary, you want to get you want to get a lot of bandwidth. You want prioritization over the residential users, and those are the main takeaways for selecting a vendor. In your area. Usually you don't have that many choices, but customer service also plays a factor. When you call for technical support, do you get someone on the phone, or are you going to have to open a ticket, wait for several days for someone to call you back? And there's just a whole slew of things. Hopefully you're working with some sort of a technical consultant, and they can help you navigate through the plans and the options from internet provider standpoint. One other thing on reliability, some businesses that require internet like all the time will sometimes select two internet providers and have a primary and a backup, or even a third internet option. And then there's load balancers out there that will supply the RV park, from fiber internet. And if that goes down, they can go to satellite internet automatically. And then if it detects that, both your fiber and your satellite are down, it can, go to a backup of a cellular modem, to get some access. That's probably more of an overkill than most RV parks are going to want to do. But just know that is an option, where you can select multiple internet providers and multiple methods if availability is a concern. So, wow, that's quite a bit of technical detail there, Hef. So you go ahead and you order the internet. You have an internet provider selected. They come out, they install it on site, and you have internet. Then what? Then what do you do? Right, yeah. So you order internet to your RV park, and if you were just a residence, you'd have a Wi-Fi router there, and you'd go and you'd configure your TVs to talk to the router, and you'd be pretty much done. With an RV park, you're just getting started, because once you get the internet on site, you have to make it available. And instead of a 1,500 or a 2,000 or 300, 3,000 square foot house, or even a 9,000 square foot mansion, it's all pretty much contained and everything is close together. When you're talking about an RV park, you can be talking, 35, 50, 100 acres or whatever. And it becomes much more challenging, to get the internet distributed, throughout your RV park. To make matters worse, in an RV park, you have a lot of RVs that are coming and going, sometimes on a daily basis. And they all have Wi-Fi devices in them. Some have their own Wi-Fi hotspots, multiple Wi-Fi hotspots, and all of this causes interference. Now, if you're, in a residential neighborhood and your Wi-Fi router, isn't working well with your neighbor's Wi-Fi router because you're both using channel 6, for example, I could change my router at my house to use channel 1 or channel 3 or 9 or 11 or whatever. At an RV park, it's like a game of whack-a-mole. You could go ahead and tune your Wi-Fi hotspots, so they're not interfering with each other. But the second, a big rig shows up, now all of a sudden you got, a new channel 11 device in between, one part of your RV park and another part of your RV park. So there's a constant dynamic going on with an RV park. And, let's face it, when you're in a neighborhood, houses are typically made out of brick and wood, maybe some plaster, and, Wi-Fi signals transmit fairly well through those. RVs, on the other hand, have steel sides and, metal, and they have a lot of electronics in them that can, really cause a lot of challenges with an RV park. That sounds like a big challenge. How do you address that? It is. It is a huge issue. I can't tell you how many RV parks I've been to, and Wi-Fi has always sucked. I could work on it sometimes. I get drop connections. I get low bandwidth. I'd be on a work call, and it's like, Troy, you're breaking up, or Hef, you're breaking up. It's like, oh my God, and you're scrambling, you're trying to do things, but I just can't tell you how bad RV park Wi-Fi is. So, and this is my professional opinion, and some people may disagree with me, but the absolute best solution in an RV park is to hardwire your devices as much as possible and not depend upon over-the-air signals in Wi-Fi. A lot of parks will put up a mesh system where, they'll have 6 or 7 Wi-Fi routers that are all talking to each other and talking to the guests and all that. And, that's all fine and dandy until, you start, getting the dynamic of RVs coming and going. Now that mesh may not work as well. So, in my opinion, the best way to do internet in an RV park is to run physical wire between your Wi-Fi hotspots. Now there is Wi-Fi 7 coming out, which is supposed to be better and comparable to those hardwires, but I still think you're going to have problems with interference from the RVs coming and going. So I strongly recommend hardwire. Now, when I'm talking hardwire, I'm talking a couple different technologies. You can run copper twisted pair, which is typically called Cat 5 cable, Cat 6, Cat 7. It's eight wires, 4 pairs of twisted pair, a copper wire that would, connect, point A to point B. The other hardwire way you can connect a couple devices is with fiber optics. So not necessarily a wire, but it's still what I would call hardwired between point A and point B. And the big advantage of using fiber optics is you can go further distances between two devices. So copper, and it's, arguable depending upon, the type of, Cat 6 versus Cat 7 versus Cat 5 versus Cat 4 and all that. but generally you're looking at about a maximum of 300 feet with, traditional copper, Cat 5 or 6 wire. And that's in optimal lab settings. So, you might only get 200 feet before things all of a sudden start being intermittent and not work like they would. Fiber, on the other hand, I believe, I wish I would have researched it down. I think I saw 1.8 miles somewhere, maybe even longer, but significantly longer, more than you're going to need in an RV park. So the idea is to run, fiber on the longer runs and run, copper in the shorter runs. All right, I've been doing a lot of talking, and we showed some websites. Let's go look at some real examples of our design here at Harmony Ridge RV Park. So this here is a drone picture of our RV park, of Harmony Ridge RV Park, that was taken last weekend. And we were actually at capacity. We were full. So we only have 6 sites. So you can see them here. And this is our Harvest Host location here. And then this is over here is our first pull-through site called AO1. We have our second pull-through site called AO3. We're doing the even numbers on one side and the odd numbers on the other side. This is AO5. And then AO7 is here. AO9 is, let me move this, is more like right here. This site over here is A11. It's a back-end site. And then over here in the far end, and we don't really rent this site out because it's kind of small. It's by the fire pit. If someone was to rent out the whole campground, this would be a good spot for like a campground host to, or a group leader to sit at. But this is A13. It's a small 24-foot site. So this is where all of our sites are currently, and we are open for business, and we were full last weekend, as you can see here. I was pretty excited about that. But here's what we have going on here at our RV park. So we're going to, let's see here, do a highlighter. We have two utility sheds. And you may have seen that in some of the earlier videos. We have one utility shed that's here where we distribute water. And then we have another utility shed back here. All right, the internet runs down the poles here along the road. Well, not quite squiggly like that. And then we have a tap. Let's change the color here. So we have a fiber tap here. We'll put in, how about we use blue for that. So our fiber tap comes out of here and kind of comes this way and down and into our building. So this is where our fiber router is from MLConnect. So this is what has been done already. And, they give you a Wi-Fi device, and you can hook up Wi-Fi and all that. And I tested it with my phone, and, I could actually connect to it all the way in the back here. But as soon as I got, in between some of the RVs, and I'd be lucky if I could go, 50 feet from the router. And again, it might be just some interference from the RVs that came in and whatnot. So what we're going to do here is we ran conduit to each of the RV sites. I'm going to draw that in, let's draw that in red here, I guess. So we actually have conduit here that goes out to AO1, conduit that goes to AO3, conduit that goes to AO5. From here, we actually have an overflow site, A08. I didn't put on here that goes, conduit goes over to there. And then over on this other shed, we have conduit that goes to AO7, AO9, A11, and then A13. So our design here is to actually, we're gonna hardwire back to the second shed, and we're gonna use fiber for this because it's right at the 300-foot mark. So we're gonna run fiber from this shed back to this shed, so we get good internet speeds there, and that's going to be underground. We also, we have conduit run there that this fiber is going to run through. So now we have internet, from this shed to this shed, and then I'm just trying to be careful here not to be too technical, but we're going to put a switch. Think of a switch as kind of a splitter. So like for cable TV, but it's not the same. But I'm just trying to make it, simplified for our audience out there. So we're gonna put a switch in here and a switch in here, and then we will, run copper wire to each of the RV sites, through the conduit that's already there. We got 4 links from this switch, and then 4 from this switch, and then we're going to put a Wi-Fi router at the end of each of these. So each RV site will have its own Wi-Fi router, so you won't have the interference from the different rigs coming in and going. You'll have one RV router per site. Why all the extra equipment? Isn't that a bit of an overkill? Well, it may be an overkill, but keep in mind, this is a very small RV park for me. I'm an IT professional, a geek, whatever you want to call me. I'm a content creator, so I want to have, the best internet I can have out here where I spend most of my time for doing videos and that. So I have, overbuilt, what would be needed, in my case. And that was on purpose. And besides, there's estimates out there that it costs between $10,000 and $20,000 to develop an RV site, and that's for each one. And, to put a router and some conduit and, a cable, to each RV site, you're talking about $300 worth of equipment, on top of 10 or 20 grand. Probably isn't as significant as one would think. But also keep in mind that this is a highly scalable design. So you can increase the bandwidth, coming in from the road, down the road. If I had, hundreds of RV sites, I could connect, more utility sheds throughout the property and have a fiber backbone with, it's indicated here in the blue line. So, I could have, a dozen of these utility sheds scattered around 100 RV site campground or RV park, and, have, short runs. And instead of having, an RV or instead of having a Wi-Fi router at each RV site, I could do, a router that's shared by 3 RV sites if I wanted to, to save some money. So lots of options, lots of scalability here, and having the hardwired or the fiber optic cable, gives you that reliability as well. You're not in this design, you're not really dependent upon any Wi-Fi except for the 5 feet to get from the rig to the Wi-Fi router just outside the rig. So I've actually tried this here, and I get almost no degradation whatsoever having a Wi-Fi router outside of my RV. I talked a lot about scalability too. Keep in mind that this is just the first 600 feet of the acreage here. There's another 150 or 1,500 feet that goes down this way, and another 1,000 feet that goes down this way, or 1,500 that way, 1,000 feet that way, and we actually ran conduit here already. So there's conduit that runs up to here, and goes down that way, and then conduit that runs down to this way as well. So we can continue that fiber backbone down both of the forks of the RV park in the future. So I didn't have that drawn on the first diagram, but we did talk about scalability, so I just wanted to mention that real quickly here. So how do you handle those 1 or 2 guests that abuse the system? You said it was called a fair use policy. How do you do a fair use policy at the RV park to prevent those guests, 1 or 2 that may be downloading hundreds of 4K HD movies, or uploading to a backup hard drive, back up their whole PC to a hard drive, or maybe even hosting a multimedia website? How do you plan to control that? Yes, you've been paying attention. Fair use policy. The extra equipment that we are bringing in here allows us to have our own fair use policy within our RV park. I had mentioned that we had switches in here. They were like cable TV splitters, but not really. Well, the not really part is that a cable TV splitter is dumb. It just, splits the signal. We're actually using smart switches here. So each of these RV sites will be on its own port, its own dedicated connection on the switch, and then we can go in programmatically and enforce our own fair use policy. So if I have a guest on AO3 who's downloading tons of movies, or uploading a lot of backup stuff from their laptop, I can, in that switch, enforce a fair use policy and throttle their connection so they don't use my whole gigabit line. If I had gigabit fiber, maybe I allow them to just use 50 megabits or 100 megabits or 25 megabits if there's network congestion. So that's why we talked about the fair use policy in the beginning, and talked quite a bit about that, because it's the same kind of thing that we're going to do here in our RV park. So if you set 100 megabit limits and you have 1 gig fiber internet coming in, does that mean that you can only host 10 RV sites at a time? Well, that's a great question. You could, if you had 1 gigabyte coming in, an internet connection, that's 1,000 gigabytes, or 1,000 megabytes actually. So if you allocated 100 megabytes to 10 sites, then you would never have congestion, because everyone would just have 100 megabytes, and that would be the end of the story. But what you do in reality is you do what's called oversubscription or oversubscribe. So you could put 20 or 30 RV sites on that 1 gig fiber, each with 100 megabits, and not everyone is going to be using 100 megabits at a time. So you can get away with having more RV sites on that through oversubscription, or by oversubscribing it. And then what happens is if all 30 people are using the internet at the same time and using it to its maximum capacity, then the fair use policy would scale each of those users back from 100 megabits down to 33 megabits. So you have 30 users, 30 guests using 33 megabits each, to use the one gigabit or the 1,000 megabits of throughput. So that's how oversubscription works. You can have more guests on there than just dividing it just through simple math. In the above example, what if an RV park has 300 RV sites? So yeah, if you had 300 sites, well, you can oversubscribe that on, gigabit fiber too, and, down to, 3 megabits, per user, which would be incredibly slow. Or, you have to at that point bring in, more bandwidth. You can bring in multiple fiber lines. We actually have here at Harmony Ridge RV Park, we have 6 taps available. So we could bring in 6 1 gigabit fiber connections to get 6 gigabits total. So, then on a 300 RV site, you'd be back up into realistic numbers with oversubscription and that. When it comes to Wi-Fi, what's the difference between, I see 2.4G and 5G wireless? Is that like in my cellular phone where I have 3G and 4G and 5G, or is that something different? Can you kind of explain what that is? Well, it's not exactly the same as 3G and 4G and 5G for cellular technologies, but it does represent advances in technology. So 2.4 was the original Wi-Fi standard when it first came out. I don't even know when that was, 20 years ago, 30 years ago, something like that. And 5G was the follow-on standard for Wi-Fi. And the 2.4G is, believe it or not, is still, still pretty good. The thing is as you go in a higher or shorter wavelength, when you go from 2.4 to 5, you'll get more bandwidth. That's true, but you also, you suffer some distance there. You can use both. I guess, the main takeaway there is 2.4 will reach further, longer distances, and the 5 will be faster, but you have to be closer to it. So I hope that answers the question. What do you think are the most important things to be considered when building RV park internet for your guests? I think it's a lot of what we already talked about, and a lot of it comes down to the fair use policy. Not only selecting an internet provider that you can get prioritization in a fair use policy, but also in a way that you can implement a fair use policy within your RV park. So that's, I think one of the most important aspects of bringing internet into an RV park. And then, the second thing is the interference. The RVs coming in every day, you get a lot of interference. So you can eliminate a lot of that interference by direct connecting the devices within the RV park with either copper twisted pair, which is called Cat 5, Cat 6, Cat 7, or through optical links. And then I would be remiss as an IT security engineer to not mention security. It's something that, is probably not a huge risk with an RV park. I mean, who's gonna hack into an RV park? But, you could have a situation where you have a bad actor sitting on site 12 and they're hacking into, little Johnny that's doing IT work on site 25, work from home. And, if you don't consider security, that, that could be a problem. Now, a lot of the companies have their own VPNs and, have safeguards against that. But, it's still something that, that you may want to, give some thought about. In our case, our design, we're basically giving each guest their own, Wi-Fi router, similar to, a neighborhood, where each house gets its own Wi-Fi router. So each house in our case is an RV, and each RV gets a Wi-Fi router here at Harmony Ridge RV Park. So that's done, not only for bandwidth purposes, fair use purposes, security, customer satisfaction. So a lot of benefits to that, and, for relatively not much extra cost. Well, thanks, Hef. Is there anything else you'd like to tell our viewers before we hang it up for today? I would say partner with a professional in your area, a network professional that understands, what a fair use policy is, network switches, smart switches, QoS, quality of service, oversubscription, subscribing, all the terms we mentioned in this video. Hire a network engineer that understands what all that is so you can design a fair use policy for your RV park. This is not a do-it-yourselfer project. Sure, you could go out and bring an internet, put up 2, 3, 4, 5, Wi-Fi routers around your RV park in a mesh type format. Put it on your website that you offer Wi-Fi, but it's probably going to suck. Just like all the other RV parks out there that I've been to with sucky Wi-Fi. I can't stress it enough to, design a proper network that, will satisfy your guests and make your guests happy. So, think of it this way. You're not bringing in internet to a business for a business to use. You're not bringing an internet to a residence. You're bringing an internet to a community. If you have a 300 site RV park, think of it as, you are bringing internet to 300 households. Each one of those households, each one of those RVs has, 2 smart TVs, 3 smart TVs, maybe a 4th smart TV on the outside. They have smart speakers, they have tablets, they have laptops, they have computers and, lights and thermostats and monitor the temperature of, of the RV for when they're gone so their fur babies, are safe. So I can't stress it enough, get some professional help and do it right. Comet Troy is, I guess, dependent upon your perspective, but he's lucky here that he has, me to, oversee his IT work and help plan things out, the right way. So that's my opinion. I'm sticking to it. So that's episodes 1 and 2. Episode 3, we're going to be talking about specifics of what we did at Harmony Ridge RV Park here, which is open for business, by the way. We're going to actually show parts and part numbers and show some performance statistics and how things are working here in our experiment. So you won't want to miss that. Comment below with your questions, like, subscribe, ring the bell so you get notified when we have new videos out. And I will see you in the next video.